Okay, no, it's not that. It's you. You said they secured themselves, and we need to look at the means by which they did that. And they did that by being a giant totalitarian state that essentially enslaved the entire population and
Not around
to a giant
1917. They
army.
didn't even have the ability to enslave the population if they wanted to in 1917, through like 1924.
No, but by the end of World War II,
They were in a civil war, dude. Yeah, by the end of World War II, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that immediate revolutionary phase.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's
the rest of Europe was rather busy than to invade Russia at that point.
Except they all did invade Russia, though.
Yeah,
13 countries invaded it simultaneously.
Literally every decade, like 1910s, 1920s, 1930s.
And at no point in that would you ever say that they're socialist, right?
I think they were at the transitionary phase under Lenin, and then eventually they kind of.
But at no point they actually transitioned into socialism, did they?
No, no.
Well, that was an interesting debate. The socialists definitely had the better arguments overall, particularly you, xexizy, in some places, like the price calculation arguments. I'd like to join in the discussion sometime as well, though the cap vs. Soc is a tired old horse to me, and one that is not as relevant as everyone has recently come to think it is again, especially with the state of the biosphere only having less than 8 years of life support left. Let's see what other interesting videos xexizy might have for us to digest. Ooh, look at that! It's a couple of response videos to Computing Forever and Sargon of Akkad. You know what this means, don't you?
Ha-ha!
The fun has been doubled! Let's start.
Now we have an amazing video to go through today. Computing Forever, a kind of popular rational skeptic YouTuber you may or may not know, recently made a video called The Denial of Gender Reality, The Path to Communism. It sounds like something out in the 1950s, but it's impressive. It really is. It's impressively bad. Like, he had to try to be this bad. And obviously I thought it'd be fun to make a response video to it. So, however, as I was watching it to make notes, it kind of dawned on me, like, the methods he was using to do this are actually probably more interesting than the actual points he's making, and I feel like they kind of are representative and very telling of the state of the skeptic community at the moment. So instead of going through this video point by point as I normally would with response videos, I kind of want to use it to talk on a wider context here, if that's okay.
If I say that there's only two genders, does this fact constitute hate speech nowadays?
Now, like I said, it's almost impressive what Computing Forever has done here. Before even getting to the meat of the video and talking about this particular article that's got him mad that day, he's framing the entire topic of the gender debate to his liking, firing off buzzwords and conjuring up the connotations that he wants to be in your head. He paints the whole picture of his side being the silenced underdogs, even to the extent of quoting Orwell, by the way, you know, the socialist Orwell, and then while also making sure that his side is made out to be the side of reason, logic, science. We'll get into that later. And then, of course, painting the other side to be the monolithic entity controlling society's media and culture. What he calls the authoritarian gender ideology that is socially engineering society for its own gains.
Ooh, bad first start. Dave said a true statement posed as a question, so instead of acknowledging it or just ignoring it, you're trying to frame the narrative of the video in the way you want it to be able to say you're more right than he is, even though you didn't argue it. Yes, the authoritarian gender ideology is very real, and it is invading authority indoctrination complexes, schools, simultaneously globally, and Dave is combating the legitimacy of that narrative. Yes, xexizy, if we abandon the scientific understanding of biological sex in favor of ideology, then that sets a precedent for all else to be abandoned for ideology. It's ideology itself that we are attempting to rid the world of. Their capitalist ideology will be dragged out from them kicking and screaming in a few short years when the global collapse reaches our part of the world. So don't you worry your pretty little communist ideological head about any of that.
He also makes it extremely clear that if the gender debate is lost and reason and logic are abandoned, then this apparently clears the way for the social justice warriors to can take control of everything, or something to that degree.
If we begin to say that gender isn't real or that biology is irrelevant, then everything else we know to be scientifically, objectively, and demonstrably true is now open to being forcibly denied in the same way as the gender issue.
And yeah, I really want to highlight the emphasis that he places on science throughout the entire video, because it will be important later. Do remember it. Now, he even goes a step further than the usual social justice warriors are controlling all our media and free speech.
Social justice warriors are controlling the media? LOL, what? No, they were just dominating the media who is pandering to them. I've never heard anyone suggest SJWs control the media. Everyone knows they're all owned by Zionist Jews.
He also mentions how Marxism wants to like break your will or mind or something.
That's exactly what it takes to produce a Marxist utopia. Break people of their humanity through indoctrination.
I'll just say, if you actually read Marx, as much as a mental idea that is, I know, you'll see that the development and well-being of the individual was probably his main concern out of everything else. I mean, he didn't want capitalism to end just because it was like unfair. He wanted it to end because he saw it as a great limiting factor on the development of the individual. That if you're still skeptical here, you see why I did that, and you want to learn more, I'll link some videos in the description that go over the main kind of like stuff against Marxism or whatever. But that's the main point where Confusing Forever talks about communism and capitalism. So I can end my kind of rant there that I just needed to do and get off my chest, and we can get into the rest of what he's actually doing here. So once again, even before we go on to this main article that he's going to be talking about, we have some extremely interesting things worth analyzing. He's quite literally taken standard cultural Marxist rhetoric, usually applied to immigration, and applied it to gender. The thing where the super secret evil social justice warriors or Jews or globalists or whoever it is are trying to strip us of all our identities that make us different, that being national identity, or in this case gender, and this will somehow make us easier to control.
So why do gender ideologues do this? Well, simply to remove genuine diversity between men and women so as to make people more infinitely malleable and modifiable, as Jordan Peterson has stated.
How exactly, by who exactly, and to what end exactly are never actually explored, because they're not really something that Computing Forever is interested in here.
He just said Jordan Peterson covered what he just mentioned that you're asking for an explanation for. This is literally right after you told your audience to go read some Marx. There's no excuse for this.
Now, there are two possible reasons as to why this is. It could be because he can't elaborate on this without going into extremely questionable views about the Jews.
Oh? Extremely questionable views about Jews, you say? This is all part of the satanic religious cult to condition the world to accept the blending of the sexes together into a hermaphrodite, so they have both the female and male sacred energies to be supercharged spiritually or something, so they can have more success with their evil rituals to ultimately try to bring Armageddon to the world by breaking down the boundaries of reality which separates us from the spirit world / multiverse, where the so-called Holy Spirit resides that they're jealous of existing and want for themselves. They see an anal rectum as one such spiritual portal to conduct these rituals in, and I very much mean in. And the younger they are, the more pure they are, which means the greater the destruction of purity that satisfies and gains them more favor from the demons they worship, in order to more likely be granted powers by them and to draw out the Holy Spirit. That's why all the bust of tranny satanic pedophilia insanity as of late. Hey, it's their cult of Judaism, not mine. Scarlett is my favorite professional Zerg player, by the way. She's a tranny, and I'd suck her dick all day long while watching her play my race so beautifully.
Now, if you have come up north to join this event from the States, give it up for your homeboy, Puck. Now, Canada, rise for Scarlett!
This is where things get serious now.
Of Puck, if he pulls things
Puck's
up.
too out of position.
Oh, the natural. He's in a lot of trouble here.
The Mothership Core's not even here either. Okay.
Oh, one storm. That's huge.
Out. Oh my goodness. And if you look down at her bank, she's got a big gas bank as well. There's the Broodlords, 6 at a time.
That's right.
If Puck doesn't jump on this right now, he's about to be in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely agree with you, but he is up quite a bit in army supply, and a lot of his army is higher tech, has splash damage potential against Scarlet.
I don't know.
And he's taking his time here, waiting for this High Templar to join in. He does have to go for it, though. He needs to do this.
He's going to go in through that choke. He's pushing forward right now. The Broodlords are about to finish. Puck can see it right now. Can he storm on top of it? Anything? No. One storm goes to the left. Now there's the storm on top of the Broodlords. They can weather a storm or two, though. They're going to retreat. That second storm is painful. But there's nothing to get there. It's just Immortals now. An Archon or two. That's not going to do it. Scarlet with a massive supply advantage. Just holding on because of fate. GG's called Puck. She's actually winning the fight anyways, so this natural could die, and that's it. GG.
Scarlet taking it 2-0 on stage.
Or, and in my opinion, the more likely case, this is just fear-mongering.
It's just fear-mongering. Massive global amounts of political censorship have happened in the short span from when this video was made to when I'm posting this video response. Yeah, you keep talking, but things just keep looking more and more the opposite of everything you say.
Spooky, scary social justice warriors have infiltrated our schools and are turning your kids communist.
It worked with you, didn't it?
They're experimenting on your kids. Just thought I'd let you know.
What's brilliant here is that the article that he's drawing from is itself misleading. No teachers have actually been forced to do anything. All that happened is that some pamphlets were passed around advising teachers on how to deal with gender issues in the classroom and suggesting that they use terms such as purple penguin.
Snopes. Yeah, every time I've ever looked at them, they were proven liars by the very material they were attempting to lie about. 2 seconds to search up the actual document to read the actual text proves them, and now you, since you've hitched yourself to that demonic wagon, liars still, as it reads. 2. Don't use phrases such as boys and girls, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, and similarly gendered expressions to get kids' attention. Instead, say things like calling all readers, or hey campers, or could all the athletes come here? Create classroom names and then ask all of the purple penguins to meet at the rug. Here's an easy solution. If you're needing to use debunking sites to figure out your way in life, you're being played, instead of being a gamer. Put more simply, don't externalize your trust in truth.
The term boys and girls is still very much allowed by teachers as they see fit. The article, being of conservative bias,
You didn't look at all the sources, faggot.
was basically trying to turn an initiative.
An initiative by who, xexizy? Why? Do you ever ask yourself questions, mate?
Helping teachers deal with transgenderism.
Well, later you complain about a lack of scientific sources and argue that is proof of lack of validity. So nope, that's not true either. It can't help them according to you.
Into some kind of like political correctness gone mad scenario.
Wrong. The issue is political, being pushed by political institutions, as this document was written by social justice comedian Sam Killerman. This is an adaptation of a chapter from his book, The Social Justice Advocate's Handbook, A Guide to Gender.
He then goes on to talk about some random articles that seriously just don't really matter, like London Travel stopping the use of ladies and gentlemen in favor of agender terms. And other things used to confirm your suspicions that there's a authoritarian gender ideology that's secretly controlling society and trying to abolish gender through stopping the use of gendered terms.
Hold on, you smarmy little cuck. Did you just try to say the rest of Dave's evidence is irrelevant because it deals with the exact same topic of sex pronouns according to what you tell us about it? 1, that's not an argument, but 2, what the actual fuck?
You see, what he's doing here is applying this lens of the grand cultural Marxist conspiracy to otherwise unimportant, forgettable articles to try and change the intent from one of just general inclusiveness to a more malicious one. Because that's the only way he can actually make you mad about this. Without the conspiracy behind it, with just the pure goal of trying to make places more inclusive to certain types of people.
There's your political agenda, you completely brainwashed ideologue.
There isn't really much to take issue with here.
You know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize for this video. I've changed my mind now. I now agree with you that this world is indeed not inclusive enough. I'm feeling very excluded over here in my corner of my instant connection to the rest of humanity. I want everyone everywhere in the entire world to stop using non-binary sex nouns and refer to everyone as bronies and pegasisters from now on.
Interesting if you actually notice here that they'll never be able to point to gender fluidity or non-binary nonsense when it comes to the animal kingdom and our nearest primate kin. I mean, it must exist there if it exists in humans, right? This is because their politically motivated pseudoscience only extends to humans, meaning it has no basis in nature and therefore no basis in reality.
The thing is, of course, I don't really know if he's talking about sex or gender here.
If we begin to say that gender isn't real or that biology is irrelevant, then everything else we know to be scientifically, objectively, and demonstrably true is now open to being forcibly denied in the same way as the gender issue.
Because, I mean, to him, they're the same thing.
If we begin to say that gender isn't biology, biology is irrelevant, then everything is irrelevant, then everything is irrelevant, then everything is...
In terms of sex, I guess he just isn't aware that intersex animals exist. But you might want to Google that one, dude. And in terms of gender, in terms of the actual gender roles and the actual social relations of gender, why the fuck are you referring to animals to talk about human social relations?
Okay, I'll have to admit, you got one there. Human social relations aren't nearly as advanced enough to be compared to other mammals, as shown by the dominant biological scientific field of study of epigenetics. But you don't like to listen to actual scientists discussing proven science, so you don't know that, for instance, those animal tribes are far more malleable at dealing with those non-binary cases of gender or sex that they might encounter from their groups. They are much better at changing their social order than humans are. This is actually something that helps your side of the argument very much, but both of you are too uninformed on these subjects you're talking about to even know that.
Honestly, I could go on for quite a while about the mental gymnastics at play here.
Bitch, I could livestream discuss with you for 8 hours in regards to that.
But instead I'll try and bring it all together and summarize. Remember how I said to keep in mind at the start of the video how he keeps referring to himself as the side of reason, logic, and science?
Challenging facts, and therefore denying reality. To move forward as an enlightened, scientifically informed, technologically advanced, and genuinely liberal society in the classical sense, push the anti-science, reality-denying claim. I think of it a little differently. I don't care what you think, there's only two. It is anti-scientific and it is dangerous. Deny biological reality.
Well, here's the thing. He doesn't actually reference any scientific sources or any scientific arguments throughout the entire video. Not once. No theories, no concepts, no sources, no articles, no nothing. I really think that this kind of just sums up the skeptic community as it stands right now.
You want Dave to be able to provide a scientific research paper to prove the existence of a political agenda? Holy Luna, you're lacking brain cells. Bitch! Pay attention to me then!
They take their place as the enlightened rationals, the illuminators of ignorance, the side of fact and logic, but it's all in name only. Because the truth is, these people don't care about facts and reason. They just want their biases against trans people to be confirmed.
That's so misdirecting, it would take me far too long to fully explain why you're a sack of shit for saying that. But here's a quick way to diffuse that. At what point of the video did Dave ever state his bias against trans people? Oh, that's right, never.
And I do see the cliche of the leftists screaming sexism and transphobia and whatever else here, but when I'm presented with something like this, something so low effort in content, something so detached from reality, yet at the same time arrogant, threatening, and hateful, I really have no other conclusion to draw other than a logical fear as to why people are so readily eating up this bullshit. What's more though is that this whole method of propping up a regular social issue,
whose demographic are less than 0.002% of the population, but are being made to affect 100% of the people.
To be part of some greater conspiracy isn't something exclusive to Computing Forever. Even the quote-unquote rationals that aren't as far gone as him do the exact same thing. Even Sargon of Akkad, practically the leading figure of the skeptic community right now, does this as well. Just look at a video I made quite recently. Is the BBC communist? The context here being something to do with the gender pay gap, and as I'm sure whatever Sargon does talk about in it is bullshit, it's just not something I'm really concerned with here.
Admitting you didn't watch Sargon's video while claiming it's bullshit. That's enough out of you, you little worm. I can handle you being a brainwashed fool, but a self-righteous and retardedly incorrect brainwashed fool, now that is simply a burden I'm not willing to take on at this time. So I'll settle for this video response to deal with it. Oh, horse apples, that's right, we're only halfway through this nonsense. Luna, damn it. Also, your music is fucking shitty ear rape cancer. Kill it, make it go away.
There's recently been a great media furor over Donald Trump's response to the Charlottesville violence, where the alt-right and Antifa and various other leftist groups had violent physical conflict and someone ended up getting killed in a car ramming.
Okay, now I'm stopping the video already, but very quickly, Antifa weren't really involved in the Charlottesville thing. It was more like DSA, IWW, I think. Yeah, and general kind of like leftist organizations. It's a minor thing, but I've just seen this a lot thrown around, and no, surprisingly, Antifa didn't really have a huge role. I don't think Black Bloc were there at all.
Oh, Luna. I've reached the dark corner of the internet, haven't I? The deadly white nationalist demonstration in Virginia has brought new attention to an anti-fascist movement whose black-clad, bandana-wearing members have been a regular presence at protests around the country in the last year. Members of the Antifa movement were among those protesting the Charlottesville rally last weekend. Also, the reason they didn't have a black bloc is because they weren't real Antifa.
Why would buses line up in the same place and drop people off? Some of the people got on Black Lives Matter shirts and some people got on KKK shirts. This was all set up. You understand? The whole thing. First of all, you're not going to have on a KKK t-shirt and you're not going to have on a Black Lives Matter t-shirt getting off the same brand of buses parked back to back. We're talking about bumper to bumper, not in the same area, bumper to bumper.
But I already know explaining how governments carry out hoaxes to perform psychological operations on the public for their nefarious ends is something that will be far beyond your level of understanding at this moment in time, so I'll spare myself the effort.
Donald Trump was absolutely correct to say that this violence was being done on many sides, because it is.
I mean, yes, he's right to say many sides, that there was violence coming from both sides, but you seem to be implying that that alone is condemning, but honestly, the way I see it, it was justified violence.
Phew, nigga shit, son. Looks like I'm gonna need to include this in the video response as well, because holy Luna, fuck!
It was justified to break that demonstration with violence if necessary. And then the other side did not have a right to violence at all because they were fucking Nazis. It's quite simple, really. We're not doing the whole like equal playing field here. We're just not. It's okay for one side to use violence. It's not for the other side because one of those sides are literal Nazis.
Exactly. Now get back in the kitchen and make me a sandwich before I go off to conquer more brown and black people, bitch!
It's that simple. I don't know why this has to be said.
Kill yourself! Oh, what's wrong? You don't want to kill yourself? Then I'll do it for you! We are not creating separate standards for classes of rights. We are not. A house divided will not stand. A nation is a house that secures the culture within its borders. And our nations were founded on the principles of the rule of law. Laws that shall not impede on our rights, like you are trying to do.
But again, yeah, there was violence from many sides. But, you know, or both sides rather, but only one of those sides actually had justified use of that violence. It's that simple.
Actually, it's even simpler than that. No side of anything ever is justified in initiating violence at any time or place. Simple.
Antifa can broadly be termed communists.
This is just fucking ridiculous. Okay, he literally, I can't get my head over this. This goes on for like, how long does this go on? This literally goes on for a solid minute of just like riot porn of fucking, to Hell March from the first Command & Conquer Red Alert game. Like, what the fuck?
Oh damn, even I didn't know that's what that song was from. Cause CNC is a bad RTS franchise. Warcraft, Starcraft, and Seven Kingdoms 2 Master Race fucking casuals.
Like, what the hell is this? I don't understand what. And then I love before he starts it, he reminds you that they're communists, as if that's meant to like fucking scare you, as if, you know, as if we're living in the fucking Cold War or some shit. Just feel like that sometimes, but I just like this is pure spectacle. This means nothing. There is no argument here. This is just look at these spooky, scary Antifa smashing up things and being violent and like, it's just, you know, he doesn't point to any specific examples. He doesn't actually say anything. He's just like, here's some footage to make you scared about what I'm talking about. That's all this is, and it's pathetic, really.
Bash the Fash is a clear attempt to spark violence. By any means necessary is a clear attempt to spark. Pigs and blankets, kill all men, it's going down. All clear and unapologetically violent incitements. Especially if you don't even have a permit. Do you condemn these things, Stephen?
We will tread on you! We will tread on you! We will win! Stop our street! Stop our street!
Perhaps every 6 months, my montage of left-wing violence to the soundtrack of Jaunty Swing will get that much richer with examples. The pepper spray and the mace seem to be an increasingly popular theme. You know, the chemical warfare. Do you condemn these things, UN? Do you condemn these things, NATO? Because I thought it was your fucking job to condemn these things. No? All of those clips were examples of violent incitement and unincited violence by extreme leftists. No Nazis, no fascists, no alt-rights, not even a moderate conservative doing any harm or damage there. That was Antifa, the Black Bloc, BLM, BAMN, and various assorted anarcho-communists, to name but a few. Do you condemn these people, Stephen?
The left-wing journalists, who invariably identify as a form of socialist, are naturally remarkably sympathetic to communists.
The left-wing journalists that identify as socialists, can you point those out to me? Can you name them for me, please? I'd love to meet these people.
Turn on the television? Sargon's entire career has been built off of naming and exposing these radical ideologues in all walks of society.
Because they don't exist, Sargon.
Apparently, the left knows no limits to the no true Scotsman fallacy. Careful there, or you're going to give the feminists a run for their money, and we all know just how good those cunts are at grabbing money and running off with it. Also, they really don't like competition.
The mainstream media are not socialists.
How do you not know about the Young Turks? They're kind of a big deal and have been for years. In Before Not Mainstream, funded by George Soros. Checkmate, LOL.
Side note here. Can we just talk about how many people are throwing up this point that it was a permitted march and that made it okay? This is like the highest level of bootlicking you can possibly go to. It's like, oh, well, if the fucking government says it's okay, well, then it's okay. I mean, surely how do rational skeptics fall for this? I don't get it. How are you guys, like, you know, I'll actually give you guys credit that occasionally you can be so on point with, like, maybe we shouldn't trust this, maybe this is biased, blah, blah, blah. But just at all the wrong times. I don't get it. And then the second it comes down to something like this, the second it comes down to either sympathizing with Nazis or hating on communists, you will just accept anything that is given to you that confirms your biases. I don't get it.
Yes, we can all see that is the face of a young lad who is suffering from a severely crippling misunderstanding of the argument you just spouted there, so I'll help you out and attempt to correct that for you. The argument is not, because they have a permit from authority, they gain this special right. The argument is, they have this right that they are at liberty to express at any time so long as it's gone through the proper process of arrangements to make it happen. You know, kinda comes with the whole package of having a civilization that's this large and advanced. And once carrying out the proper process does not have the right to be interrupted.
But my point is, I don't give a fuck if it's a permitted protest, and nobody should. It really doesn't, like... No.
Yeah, we know. You're a communist. And not what Sargon and Computing Forever incorrectly mean when they say communist. You are an actual proudly self-identified communist activist, or revolutionist, I suppose. And therefore hate the administrations of our society and want to replace them with your own administrations. Keep making garbage videos like this on the internet, though. That will definitely see the cultural revolution that you're looking for.
And now the left is unironically still grappling with the moral conundrum of, do you punch someone just because they think differently to you? And the overwhelming consensus from the socialist left appears to be, of course you do, because that person must be a Nazi.
That was never a conundrum we were grappling with. It's never something we even discussed. No, don't punch people because they think differently to you. Punch people because they're Nazis. It's that simple, and we never grappled with that either. In fact, we were from the very start. In fact, for the last 100 years, we were like, yeah, no, do that. Why do we even have to discuss this? This is, like, there's no argument here among the left. We all very much agree. Punch Nazis.
Oh, that's right. Your crowd considers Sargon to be a card-carrying alt-right Nazi sympathizer. Instead of the center-left classical liberal Nazi despiser he actually self-identifies as. Well, that explains that. Moving on.
But people who just regularly disagree with us, everybody else but literal fascists, yeah, we're not going to punch them because we disagree with them. Of course not. That's ridiculous. But people always paint it how that is. No matter how many times you add the nuance and say, no, it's only Nazis. Every single time. Oh, so you punch everybody you disagree with? It's like, you can't win with these people.
A political extremist using the word nuance. Hey, I've got some nuance for you. How many Nazis that you randomly insulted on the streets were actually Nazis?
I don't know why this has to be said.
At least in the case of Richard Spencer, you are closer than most. But most Antifa violence is not done to Nazis. It is done to people who have no particular interest in politics, or at least are not out demonstrating at the time.
And once again, you don't actually give any examples or sources of this to prove this point. This is probably one of the biggest self-fulfilling prophecies. That I've ever seen, that Antifa just go around misidentifying fascists.
You do not hit somebody that you assume is a neo-Nazi. You cannot do that. He is on our side. Do not do that. Just sit down for a minute. Stay where you are, man. I'll get you a medic.
All the time, and then beat them up because they think they're fascists, but really they're not.
Well, what are you here for today, and what are you expecting? Are you going to stay around? What's your plan?
I'm not exactly sure right now.
It's such a meme, and people have just been saying it so much that it just made itself true magically overnight because everyone just says it is, therefore that's how it is. But the thing is, I've actually asked people, okay, so what are some actual examples besides Milo? Because Milo is the only real example I can see of people saying they were attacking Milo for being a fascist, yet he wasn't. Because I've never actually seen it happen. I've seen people say, oh, well, they attacked these reporters or something. And they're not attacking them because they're Nazis, though.
Why were they attacking them then, you greasy little cuck bucket?
They never claimed that they were Nazis. If people who claim to be Antifa are attacking people fully aware that they're not Nazis, I would condemn that, okay? But I can't help that. I can't help Antifa's action. People going out and then attacking people who they know aren't Nazis, okay, but attacking them anyway, doesn't change the fact that we should attack literal Nazis.
Damn, nigga went from it's acceptable to it's a shouldiism in the same video. How much further till we get to gas the Nazis?
My problem with this is that it implies there is not a moral equivalence between Nazis and communists, and there is.
Why though? Why the hell is there a moral equivalency between Nazis and communists? communists who want to change the mode of production of society to a use-based one rather than a profit-based one, okay, who want to help people, who want to help everybody, okay, versus people who literally want genocide. You can say in some weird sense that they both lead to the exact same totalitarian genocidal states or whatever the fuck, but the difference is, okay, this is intentional for Nazis, it is not intentional for communists. If somebody says they're a communist, that does not mean that they intentionally want a totalitarian state that is going to kill people. If they say they are a Nazi, that does mean they inherently want this, because Hitler is an example of successful fascism, okay? So when you say that they are morally equivalent, you are completely ignoring any kind of intent that these people have, what they actually want to do to society. You're just saying because they both use violence, they're inherently wrong. But when we take that back, even liberal democracy shouldn't exist, because how do you think feudalism was overthrown? You think the kings and the monarchy just casually gave up all their power? No, fuck no. There had to be violent revolution to overthrow them with political violence. Okay, but this violence, as you would agree, was justified.
Not speaking for Sargon here, just as someone who knows him extremely well, that indeed he would support that incarnation of political violence because he is in favor of the rules for radicals approach to political violence, in that, in the example of feudalism you provide, there is no alternative route to achieve change on the political landscape. When peaceful revolution is made impossible, violent revolt is made inevitable. Sargon only supports political violence up until there is another method of political action that becomes available, such as voting in Western liberal democracies to effect political change, instead of randomly assaulting your fellow citizens on the streets.
I mean, let's compare their actions, shall we? Let's have a look at the things that both of these groups do and see if we can't identify any commonalities. So some neo-Nazi has been arrested for smashing the glass at the Holocaust Memorial in Boston. And like I showed in the Antifa footage earlier, this is leftists pulling down a Confederate statue in Durham. Neither of these groups are particularly concerned with property rights. Both the Nazis and communists are what you could term as some variant of socialist, which is incidentally directly opposed to the English liberalism of the Enlightenment that was the direct inspiration for the Founding Fathers.
I've tried to start a sentence 3 times now and I just can't. Oh, okay. This is again, okay, confusing the fact that violence existing at all is inherently bad, okay? You have literally compared taking down a statue commemorating a literal, like, someone who wanted to keep slavery going to a Holocaust memorial.
So some neo-Nazi has been arrested for smashing the glass at the Holocaust Memorial in Boston. And like I showed in the Antifa footage earlier, this is leftists pulling down a Confederate statue in Durham.
I really... How are you this dumb? I don't get it. You have literally compared taking down a statue commemorating a literal, like, someone who wanted to keep slavery going to a Holocaust memorial.
The glass at the Holocaust Memorial statue.
A statue commemorating a Holocaust memorial. I really... How are you this dumb? I don't get it. No, hey, that's mean. You're not this dumb. You're just incredibly good at manipulating dumb people, clearly. And then again, Nazis are a form of socialists. Like, what the fucking fuck? Do I even need to bother with that one? I don't think I do.
Under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party, grew into a mass movement and ruled Germany. What am I missing from this picture, xexizy? Well, okay, that's a fair point. This source isn't reputable either. I mean, they fucking turned Hannibal Barca into a nigger.
Hannibal is a Carthaginian aristocrat from the Barcid family, who are a significant family in Carthage.
He's talented, he has grit, he has perseverance. Hannibal is one of the few enemies Rome had that they actually respect and idolize, and that is a lot because of his tremendous achievement.
He's got a famous father who's fought against the Romans, who nurtures him, in the words of some of the writers, as a lion cub raised for the destruction of Rome.
Here is one group of racial collectivists chanting Black Lives Matter, and here is another group of racial collectivists chanting White Lives Matter.
Oh look! 2 groups in a protest are chanting things. They're the exact same! And it's not like the second group was chanting White Lives Matter as a direct response to Black Lives Matter, right? That's what that is.
Nope, wrong again. All Lives Matter is a response to the Black Lives Matter chant. The White Lives Matter chant is a response to the changes in demographic from massive unfiltered migration, primarily of jihadists, into Western countries running around burning down their cities. Not a bunch of niggers running around burning down their cities.
The only difference produced by this cacophony of racialized collectivism is the side that they're advocating for.
This is like the argument that if you condemn white power, you have to condemn black power, without actually looking into the nuance of what actually both of these groups do and think.
What? Are you gonna tell me because of historical context that one group/side gets to rule over the other? No, go fuck yourself.
And it's like, because black power don't believe that we should rid society of white people.
Well, then it's hardly black power, now is it? Or could it be that you're just some retarded twat that ignores the fact that whenever an ethnic group gains homogeneity over society, they rarely have qualms with ethnic cleansing? Just look at the countries ruled by Muslims, for examples.
Besides what you cultural Marxist conspiracy theory nutcases think, and they don't think that all white people are the same, either.
Just all inferior and need to be ruled over. Man, you're one evil son of a horse, you know that? Holy Luna.
In fact, black power has historically targeted the system of racial oppression rather than the actual people themselves. I'm not saying there are exceptions. I'm not saying black supremacy isn't bad, because of course it's bad. But to say that they're the same thing is ridiculous.
You just said they were bad! That's what Sargon is saying! You agree!
It just completely ignores history. It completely ignores what historically it has been. And the thing is, I agree that identity politics is bad.
Now let me tell you why my political violence is justified and yours is not, based on the historical identities we come from.
But here's the thing, white power uses the methods of identity politics by saying all black people are the same. By saying it's black people as an identity that are the problem. Okay? Black power actually, well, maybe to a certain degree it does.
Here, mate, I primed and loaded it just for you. Go ahead and just put yourself out of your misery already.
But mostly, not nearly in the same way, and not nearly to the same extent as white power. To the degree where they're just not the same thing. It's not the same thing, we're just summing in different groups, because they don't use the same methods, they don't think the same way about other identities.
That's very interesting that you would claim to know what a foreign group thinks about other foreign group identities. What makes you so sure you can think exactly like them, but they can't think exactly like you? Oh, that's right, you're blatant racism.
To target actual systems and actual economics, that's not identity politics in the slightest.
Meanwhile, earlier in the video of empty space that is xexizy's head,
honestly, the way I see it, it was justified violence. It was justified to break that demonstration with violence if necessary. I don't know why this has to be said. That's what we should be doing, and that's usually what the left tends to do. And you know, Black Lives Matter itself. Black Lives Matter itself.
You wouldn't have turned your head while scratching your neck like this when you talked about that terrorist organization funded by George Soros a year ago, would you? Oh, how so much has changed in such a short window of our current times of revelations.
I want to be really, really clear about this. It is the opinion of the neo-Nazis that the left-wing racial identitarians are creating more Nazis.
So what Sargon's doing here is actually quite interesting, because he's using alt-right talking points without directly allying himself with the alt-right.
He was telling you what your opponents are saying about you because he knows your side is the largest echo chamber there is?
He doesn't even stop to consider that maybe the alt-right is slightly biased on this topic, and instead just takes literally everything they say at face value for why the alt-right is gaining popularity.
No, Sargon has been arguing for years that your behavior is causing the alt-right to grow before the alt-right even existed, you absolute twat! He's been predicting your actions and outcomes for years!
He doesn't even entertain the idea of showing the left's side of the story on why the alt-right have gained in popularity here.
Go on, then.
So, Sargon, in case you're wondering, I'll fill you in. Yes, the alt-right are a reaction to the left.
That's not what Sargon just quoted. It's racial identitarians, such as yourself. Also, good, you agree about the main premise of the video. Why did you need to make this video response again?
But just because something is a reaction to something doesn't mean that the original cause of this is what's to blame here.
Actually, since we're talking about the application of identification to a recent trend, the violence from the left, as you put it, are in fact to blame for the rise in the alt-right's popularity. But the problem here is your choice of words to inject a moral quandary unnecessarily. We are identifying actions and reactions and the mechanisms behind them. You are the one injecting morality into this thought experiment where it's not needed, while at the same time removing it from real-life events where it is needed, which is readily apparent in the next two examples you give.
Okay, hear me out. Take these two examples. Say, is it the wife's fault for being beaten because she burned dinner that night? Or how about a more politically orientated example? Is it the fault of the classical liberals for trying to progress society and lead us to a liberal democracy away from feudalism? For the monarchy, crushing them with violence in order to sustain current society, is it the classical liberals' fault there? No. Because it's the monarchy who are in the wrong here.
And the real short and easy answer to that is all parties are morally responsible for the actions they themselves committed. Also, this isn't an argument against the fact of the alt-right being a reactionary force to the racial identitarian left.
What you should be arguing about here, Sargon, is not whose fault it is or who started it from the safety of your centrist ivory tower, consistently jerking yourself up about how goddamn moral you are. But rather you should be arguing about which side is going to lead to a better society.
No, he shouldn't. We reject your false lesser of two evils dichotomy.
Now, the example I like to draw on to kind of frame this, and one that I pointed out in my last video, is think of political violence as an earthquake. Okay, it causes damage, it's bad, okay, we don't want it to happen, but when it does happen, what you're doing, Sargon, is you're blaming the tectonic plates for shifting that day.
Is that not what causes the earthquakes? Didn't you just get done telling us how we need to properly apply blame to the forces causing violence? Now you're telling us blame is no longer what matters and it's the principle of the outcome? Luna, hell, your analogies have just gotten so lost, you're not really making points anymore.
You just can't help it. And the reason you can't help it is, and the reason that these, like, quote-unquote earthquakes happen to begin with, is because it's actually liberal democracy that is perpetually creating the conditions that cause people to act like this to begin with.
In the strangest of ways, I was never expecting I would end up agreeing with you on the most fundamental aspect about everything we'd been discussing in this video. We live in strange times. Deja vu.
You know, and just examples of this are the 2008 crash and the refugee crisis.
See what I mean? How did we go from Charlottesville, which was a false flag, to this?
And you can talk about how you want to reform capitalism so that these things just don't happen to begin with.
Since the 2008 banking bailout has nothing to do with this, how are you blaming the jihad crisis the world is facing at the moment on capitalism?
And that's all fine and dandy, but it's kind of a useless pursuit when they've already happened. And they've already had that effect on society, which has now led us to the point of political violence that we're at. Regardless of if it was preventable or not with Hayek's vision of capitalism, it's already happened. I'm sorry, but we can't go back in time. And things like this are going to continue to happen, because even if you can prevent some kind of crash in one instance, in fact, you've admitted yourself in that debate we had.
The rest of Europe was rather busy than to invade Russia at that point.
Except they all did invade Russia, though.
Yeah.
13 countries invaded it simultaneously.
Literally every decade, like 1910s, 1920s, 1930s.
Crashes are always going to happen, and they are what ultimately lead to these kind of things.
Still waiting for you to make the connection of how the global jihad crisis caused Charlottesville, which is the fault of capitalism. Birdie, 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 birdie.
So instead of just sitting there and hoping people at some point just regain their senses or stop engaging in political violence magically overnight,
we need to choose whose political violence is more just and aid them in killing their opponents? No thanks.
You have to actually get engaged and take a side here, which you think would be better for society, fascists or anti-fascists.
At what point in the video did you demonstrate that there was a side in this event that was against the utilization of fascism?
very quickly, Antifa weren't really involved in the Charlottesville thing, but yeah.
I think we all fully understand just how much you don't know now, xexizy.
But yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm gonna try and get this uploaded in like an hour, like maybe 2. And I decided I want to make this video about 2 hours ago. So this would probably be the quickest video I've ever made. So if it's any good, I'll actually be quite proud of myself.
Thank you for this experience. I enjoyed it. Don't ever do it again. This response has taken 6 days of my life. It takes a lot longer to refute lies than it does to tell them. Never tell lies ever again.
But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hey guys, what's happening? So, as expected, Sargon of Akkad has made a video about this whole Charlottesville thing, and as expected, it's fucking horrific. Now, it's 30 minutes long, and I think we dealt with the 2 main topics of this video. Somehow it was a 30-minute video, and as expected, it's fucking horrific.